Donald Trump has done something very, very disturbing. He signed a memo reorganizing the National Security Council, and he has promoted former CEO of Breitbart News, Steve Bannon, to being a regular attendee at the Principals Committee meeting of the National Security Council. To give you a sense of what the National Security Council does and what it is, this is the primary venue where the President of the United States considers national security and foreign policy issues with senior national security advisors and cabinet officials. This is the a council that helps the president make decisions about national security. And former Breitbart CEO Stephen Bannon is now going to be a top advisor to the president on these matters. In contrast, who is being slightly pushed out to make room for Steve Bannon? The director of national intelligence and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are only going to attend these meetings now, Pat, when issues directly relevant to them are going to be discussed. For comparison, under Barack Obama, do you miss him yet? The director of national intelligence and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs attended all meetings about of the National Security Council, which makes sense. And there's an article from this morning from the Washington Post called "Questions Multiply Over Bannon's Role in the Trump Administration." This is the most understated headline, maybe, of the presidency. Questions like "What the F is going on here?" are the type of questions that are surfacing.
Could you imagine if President Obama took off the DNI or the director of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from the National Security Council and put someone on there like David Axelrod? There would be outrage, and rightfully so.
Well, David Axelrod would sometimes show up, right? He would sometimes show up at these meetings to provide a little bit of a layer of maybe the political implications or something like that. But the idea of putting David Axelrod on there as a permanent member and then saying DNI out, chairman of the Joint Chiefs out. Steve Bannon is a professional propagandist, right? He's the alt-right sweetheart with no experience whatsoever in national security. This is part of the war on intel. Trump maintains the media created this so-called conflict between Trump and the heads of the intel community, but Trump loves the staff. If you boot out the people who are there to communicate the intel obtained by the staff, you're not really sending the message that you love the work of the lower level intel staff. And not surprisingly, again, Republican Senator John McCain, who is the new voice of reason of the Republican Party, although he still says crazy stuff on a weekly basis, he said that this makes no sense. It doesn't take a liberal to realize that this is a train wreck, and some Republicans get it too. John McCain saying, we have the quote here on CBS Face the Nation yesterday, "I'm worried about the National Security Council. Who are the members of it and who are the permanent members? The appointment of Mr. Bannon is something which is a radical departure from any National Security Council in history. The role of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has been diminished, I understand, with this reorganization. The one person who is indispensable would be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in my view." Well, yeah, Bannon has no job experience in foreign policy. He was in the Navy, then he went to Goldman Sachs, then he did documentary filmmaking, and then he ran Breitbart News, a far-right website that peddles conspiracy theories. Since when does running an alt-right news website make you more of an asset to the president's national security team than the director of national intelligence? You hear all the time about how the left doesn't support the military. I'd much rather the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff be advising the president on national security than Steve Bannon. Small question. I know stuff like the law doesn't really matter anymore, but how can Steve Bannon even be on the NSC without the consent of the Senate? Take a look at this. This is from these are rules from the 50 U.S. Code, Section 3021 on the National Security Council. The council should be composed of the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, the secretary of defense, the secretary of energy, and the secretaries and undersecretaries of other executive departments and of the military departments when appointed by the president and with by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to serve as at his pleasure. Doesn't somebody have some oversight over Steve Bannon being on this thing according to the law?
I mean, you'd hope so. Ideally, your political strategists and the people in charge of the National Security Council would be kind of separated. I can see sometimes there could be an overlap there, sure, but you have to wonder if there's an ulterior motive here.
And again, this could all be part of this idea of doing really extreme stuff so that then when Trump negotiates back to something slightly less crazy, people forget and look the other way.
Gamefly is sort of like Netflix for video games. They have over 8,000 new and classic games for Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS4, PS3, Wii, and a bunch of other platforms. And you can play as many games as you want for one monthly fee. And if you find some games you want to keep, you can buy them for a low used price. There's never any due dates or late fees. And our audience can get a free 30-day trial at gameflyoffer.com/TDPS. The games are shipped directly to you with return envelopes included. There's no contracts, and you can rent games through the mobile app. Get the free 30-day trial for the David Pakman Show audience and support our show by going to gameflyoffer.com/TDPS.